Guys, it's been another week in Destiny 2, hasn't it? From lots of conversation about Bungie's next game, Bungie advertising the hell out of Marathon in their current live game, and then a delay to the next update for D2. Man, we knew 2026 was going to be exciting for the Destiny player base, but this is something else. We're jumping back in with the community roundup. We're going to talk about all the news goings on throughout the course of this week. Discussion from Destiny 2 players who are sick of each other, and Bungie, and the game, maybe even life in general. Man. If you enjoyed the video, you can make me slightly less sick of my life by dropping a like rating down below, because that's the metric by which I measure the quality of my existence. Only joking, or am I? First up, Bungie posted their tweet this week, and because we'd heard the rumours that Shadow and Order had been pushed back, obviously, players were hoping that Bungie would confirm that or speak about it, but they still don't. And while most players didn't expect to get the full roadmap for the game or something this week, it certainly caused a lot of frustration. Of course, we can only assume that Bungie would have to make this announcement at some point in the next couple of weeks. But with it being quiet, of course players are frustrated as well that Bungie speak about Marathon so much. There's this narrative going around, or references to what Bungie have said in the past where they indicated Marathon is being developed by a separate incubation team and is not pulling resources from Destiny 2. I guess for a lot of players it's hard to believe that that is the case, while many of us will appreciate that Bungie obviously want to focus on Marathon. Either way, like I said before, it's a weird strategy to try and market the new game while leaving negativity to fester in your existing game. You'll just have to give me your thoughts and hopefully things will improve. We'll hear something soon. Otherwise, Chris Barrett has refiled his $200 million lawsuit against Sony and Bungie after it had previously been dismissed, so Barrett's still trying to get the money, essentially. Of course, Chris Barrett was the co-creator of Destiny, and even now on his Twitter profile, he lists himself as the creator of Marathon. Obviously, Barrett's had a big impact on Bungie over the years, but it was let go due to sexual harassment allegations, which is pretty wild. Of course, anything could happen with Bungie and Marathon, so they probably think it's a good idea to try and get that cash while they can. It'll be interesting to see it play out. If Chris Barrett was to win that, it would be one of the wildest lawsuits in the gaming industry that's been publicized at the very least, so it's an interesting side story to keep an eye on, I guess, at the very least. Here's a good one. It's lovely when players speculate, could something really cool be happening? From this thread, an anomaly at the tower appeared. Is this a result of 3's death? As we can see, it's a bubble. It's a ball over the tree. Some kind of energy field pulsating outwards, emanating from a strange crystal, possibly a disturbance as a result of 3's death. It appears random. And it's cool, man. People were timing how long it was there, all these kinds of things. What is it? What does it mean? Yeah, it's a Titan bubble. It's a hacker. Dude, cheating in Destiny 2 is getting absolutely wild. Players using supers in the tower and all that kind of stuff. But there's a positive bit of news here. Marathon is going to use BattlEye anti-cheat. That's the same software Bungie's using for D2. And considering the two games are on the same game engine, surely this means BattlEye is going to do an absolutely flawless job of keeping cheaters out of Marathon. Also in the news this week, Marathon pre-orders somehow caused Destiny 2 to install without permission, and devs quickly fixed the issue. Crazy part is, this actually gave Destiny a bit of an uptick in the Steam charts in terms of how many people have actually downloaded the game. Bungie trying to boost that player count any way they possibly can. Also, players discussed the fact that non-Destiny content is featured in Eververse's expansion section. And I mean, it's a bit cheeky on Bungie's part, really, isn't it? Throwing Marathon in as a Destiny expansion. Of course, it is not. It's a totally separate game. It's a bit like your ex asking if they can put a picture of their new boyfriend on your wall. In all seriousness though, is this a bit misleading, potentially? Could some players have actually thought, hey Marathon, there's going to be a new DLC for Destiny, this is awesome, finally! Other folks might say, hey look, Bungie just published their roadmap. For some reason, it's got all of the things they've previously done on it. And then this thing called Marathon. Interestingly, some folks from the community even went onto the Marathon Reddit to warn hopeful new players Bungie have a pattern of behaviour worth being aware of. And they point out it's good that Bungie listened to all of the feedback from the alpha for Marathon and added things like prox chat, changed up the visual style, and of course they've done other things, but are these red flags? They say Bungie have a habit of making very poorly thought out decisions that are universally disliked upon announcement, sticking to them at first, and then, once backlash or sentiment gets too negative, they finally go back on them. And they basically warn as a new community forms for Marathon, it's definitely worth being aware of this kind of thing. It will likely hit Marathon too. Hopefully, it won't happen and Bungie have learned their lesson, but they say I think it's good to set reasonable expectations. And I don't know, maybe it sounds a bit jaded or negative, but they're not wrong, are they? Let's be real, it's true. Loads of conversation about the performance of Marathon in the Steam charts, especially when it went live for pre-order. It would appear that's kind of dropped back a bit, to be fair. Where is Marathon now? This is a United States Steam chart, so it's only Steam. There are other platforms, of course. Marathon's now number 26 on there. I think earlier in the week it was right up in the top 10, maybe top 5 even. And we still see things like Arc Raiders absolutely dominating. Of course, Counter-Strike at the top is free to play anyway, as are plenty of the other titles in the top 10, but we should recognize games like Marathon really improve their performance based on word of mouth. So it's all good us talking about Marathon before it's even dropped, but we got an open beta in a few weeks, and then of course the launch itself. So I think the game will speak for itself. This chart probably doesn't mean an awful lot. I mean, if Marathon was like not in the top 100, that would be really bad. But otherwise, for the moment, yeah, it's probably not really worth paying a massive amount of attention to. And because Bungie haven't given us a whole lot to go on at the minute, there's still tons of speculation in the community. Is there still a roadmap coming? Looking at some of the top comments here, I'm willing to bet that they either completely changed gears after they announced the roadmap, so they had to take time to actually figure out what's next, but B, a lot of those plans now hinge on Marathon. And I guess that's a possibility, really. That could also be why things seemingly are not kind of functioning in the way they normally would with Bungie Communications. Maybe it's the case that Sony have actually applied limitations to Bungie's plans moving forward until we see what the performance of Marathon is. We just don't know. That's why Bungie really should be talking about it. There's kind of something a bit more light-hearted here. This is Google's AI overview of Lodi from Destiny 2. And to be fair, it gets most of the info correct. But what's going on with that image, dude? Who is that? I'm guessing it's a character, a person from some other piece of media. I don't actually know, but maybe this AI knows something. Maybe this is Bungie's kind of graphics rework for D3, and Lodi is going to be a main character. New art style confirmed. Next up, we're going to talk about Removed by Moderator. I had actually saved this because it was a discussion about the community being genuinely miserable to be around. Actually, I can kind of relate to this sometimes because obviously I spend all my time in the Destiny and Bungie communities, so it can get a bit much, man. I know a lot of us are kind of jaded. We've been around for a long time, and that's not a criticism. Bungie make a lot of mistakes, and maybe we're witnessing one right now with Bungie not really speaking about the game. Having said all of that, it totally gets pretty tiresome. Looking at some of the responses, I still love Destiny. Feels like I'm in the minority most times. There are loads of folks who still really enjoy playing Destiny. And there are also lots of people who will come and play the new thing, and then when the new thing is not the new thing anymore, they'll go away, play other stuff, and then come back to play the next new thing. And they just kind of quietly enjoy the game. Doesn't that sound lovely? The Destiny community post-Lightfall has been one of the genuinely worst communities I've ever seen, by a wide margin. It's a special type of toxic when you see people bitching about the free Marathon Cosmetics pack that we got in the store today at Refresh. It's true though, I would say, to be honest, one of the number one things that kind of cultivates negativity around the Destiny player base is lack of information and lack of direction about the future. And that's the biggest problem with this whole roadmap situation, right? Bungie know how important those things are. But they made this crucial error kind of throwing around the discussion about a roadmap and then never delivering on it, or at least not yet. And clearly they weren't ready to have that conversation. Hopefully the fact that it's taken so long is actually because they have lots of things that they are working on that will be good. And we know that stuff takes time, but lack of conversation around it just breeds more negativity, unfortunately. Someone posted on the D2 Reddit from Blueberries here, who said, I really miss the old weekly resets. I know we were tired of the Pinnacle chase, but I definitely think it was a better system than what we have today. The portal's all about freedom, but I miss the simplicity of having a curated list of things to do each week and just hitting a button to get started. This thread says though, translation, please make the game worse for nostalgia. I actually kind of disagree with that. I mean, Portal does have its merits, the way Bungie are doing things in D2 right now. There are absolutely some positives there, but it's definitely the case that not having kind of rotations in the Nightfalls, featured raids, relevant raids, even components like weekly story, right? They were not mind-blowing, but people engaged with the game a hell of a lot more on weekly resets than they do right now because a lot of things don't really change at reset currently. And I guess that's the point that Blueberries was trying to make, so I would not argue that having a weekly reset that actually means something makes the game worse. There are caveats, but I feel like it's a huge generalization to say it simply makes the game bad. Then folks speak about the Text Mechanica boost that we had this week. Now, in concept, some of these boosts and surges actually could be pretty cool. I guess the biggest problem is that they're affecting content that people are not that excited to actually play, right? And I guess to an extent, because players are a little bit bored of the things that we get in the portal, for instance, they're kind of looking for these surges as potentially actually making that content interesting, right? But when the content is fundamentally less interesting than it should be, small boosts on the side don't really do much to move the needle. However, if Bungie want to give us a primary weapon boost that just lasts for the remainder of the season, I would be all for that. And on that subject as well, kind of connected to it, there's a thread about dead weeks being more bothersome now. A dead week in gaming is a week where there's nothing substantially new happening. Every game has them, and we've had more consecutive ones than others. But they go on to argue that dead weeks have kind of turned into dead months. And this all connects to the discussion about the lack of things like Iron Banner rolling around. Yet it's still true that, rolling around Arms Week, Iron Banner, Heavy Metal, those kinds of things. There's a limit on how much hype they actually build for the game. But at the same time, Bungie have them kind of just sitting there and we don't know precisely when we're going to get all of them. So it does feel like they're kind of underutilizing it a little bit. And it certainly hasn't helped to keep some of the momentum that we had when Renegades dropped, right? That first month of Renegades was really good when that content was new and we were still chasing stuff. So I'd say it's most bothersome that Bungie kind of didn't foresee that big drop off after, their launch period. And at least try and time some of these events a little bit better. Something more positive though, according to Astacross in a video recently, he said the VOG lead designer is now back working on D2. This was kind of a quick comment in a separate video. Players are now speculating about it on Reddit. They also say Luke Smith was the lead designer of the Vault of Glass. I actually don't recall precisely who it is. I mean, if you're saying Luke Smith is back at Bungie working on Destiny, then that would be absolutely wild, but it is very much unconfirmed. Otherwise, yeah, it would be a positive if folks who previously were kind of leads on the Destiny team were actually coming back to Destiny, maybe moving back from Marathon development, things like that. That'd be dope, but it's pure speculation. Bets for when old rat content will get tiered loot and set bonuses. I'm guessing at earliest it'll be 2028. Best response here. There's going to be a 2028 for the game or for the planet. I mean, it's a good question, isn't it? Very much doubt Bungie will do a big update where all of them get brought back into the game, but something I suggested recently would be, even if Bungie could bring back one or two of them every season or every major update every few months, it might make them relevant again, at least for a short period of time. But it's another part of the game that Bungie have just been really quiet about. Otherwise, Joseph Cross, who was formerly the franchise art director for Marathon, spoke recently in an interview, stating that the studio had took such a big risk on the idea of Marathon. And it also said the concept of studios funding unproven, unknown projects for 6 to 8 years for hundreds of millions of dollars. How much longer are things like this going to exist? I've been part of a couple of them now. And of course, Joseph Cross elected to leave Bungie after the whole Marathon art thing, and he basically said he finished working on Marathon at release lock, so this was essentially the point where the game was finished, they were locking in all of the content and things that'll be in the game when it drops, but beyond that, they kind of go into quality of life testing and prep for launch. So he did see the core development of the game all the way through to the end. I actually feel a little bit like Joe Cross was sort of thrown under the bus with that whole live stream thing. A lot of people were angry at the time because of the art theft, which I totally agree with, and they blamed Joe Cross for it directly. I actually think it's probably a broader Bungie problem, because you can't necessarily do art direction, manage all the teams that are making that content, come up with concepts yourself, moderator for where all of that stuff comes from, right? That's why Bungie had to do a studio-wide audit to actually check if there was nothing else in Marathon that had been taken from elsewhere. And I don't think it's reasonable that one person is responsible for all of that. Let's keep in mind, whoever did steal the artwork, they're a Bungie employee, they're not a Joseph Cross employee. Either way, Joe Cross said, he basically left because he was aware that he'd spent 15 years on 2 separate projects at Bungie, and more or less it was time for him to move on and focus on other aspirations that he has as an artist in general, right? He also referred to the fact that he's not a game designer, and that's not the only thing that he's interested in, so that's totally fair enough. For today, guys, that's the discussion. If you found it interesting, a rating would really help us out. Share your thoughts down in the comments as always. Fingers crossed for more positivity from Bungie in the coming weeks. We'll just have to wait and see, but for now, cheers for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day.